I'm Jared.
I'm Brandon.
This is another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. Major cuts in the WWE, all coming off of AEW's Double or Nothing as we head into NXT in Your House takeover as well as Hell in the Cell. We have so much to talk about, so without further ado, the Heel to the Face podcast starts right now.
Fans celebrate with me from Rome to Rochester.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
Another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast is here. Brandon to the right of me or left of me, depending on where you're seeing us. But if you're listening to us, he's wherever you want to be. It's myself, Brandon. You can find us on social media at Icebreaker21 and KRock Jared, respectively. And most importantly, follow the show at Heel to the Face as we are coming off of AEW Double or Nothing. But, well, what stole the headlines, obviously, this week were the big releases from WWE. So instead of getting into AEW Double or Nothing.
It's a mouthful.
I would say that 10 times fast, but I can't say it one times fast. AEW
or one time slow.
Double or Nothing, but we'll start with the major releases. Very surprising, and a lot of times they surprise me, but I don't think I've ever been as surprised as Braun Strowman being released.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. I sent you the message, and I'm like, whoa. Like, I wasn't surprised that Aleister Black was getting cut. Lana, I kind of had a feeling. Ruby Riott, that one surprised me mildly. But Braun Strowman, you gave him a big contract, or a monster contract, as I like to say. Back in 2019, right around 2 years ago, he was getting upwards of $1 million annually. And you had him in big matches, for a good portion of his career here in WWE, and no more. I don't get it. I'm very very confused by what they're doing, but I have an answer to that question. And my theory is WWE is preparing for a sell. You heard me.
Yes. No, and a lot of people are saying that as of late, obviously. The reason for the releases were all cited by those in management as budget cuts. But, I think what's really difficult when we talk about Braun Strowman being released is to try to relate it to sports. And it's very, very hard to do that because WWE, one, it's a 24/7, 365 kind of thing. There is no seasons. Another thing is to be honest with you, it's funny because people talk about wrestlers dying young, but when it comes to actually performing, they don't ever retire.
No,
they never voluntarily retire. It seems like they are there as long as possible. Obviously, you have people like The Undertaker. You have people like, John Cena. You have people like Stone Cold. You have people who, or, Shawn Michaels, the Sting for,
yeah. Well, we'll talk to him. Talk about him a little bit.
If Sting started his career in 2006, which was when it was the, what we thought was the tail end of his career, he should still be retired by now.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, that's what's the difference between sports and this. Is people who started in 1989 are nowhere near sports nowadays. I mean, we talk about Tom Brady being old, and his first season was like, what, 2001?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Okay.
20 years.
Exactly, and that is a very long career in the world of sports, 20 years. Most people don't do that. Michael Jordan didn't do that. What did Michael Jordan retire? Finally, way past his prime, way to the point that people didn't even want to give him a proper send-off, like where they were surprised he's not retired already. In what, the year 2000?
2002. It was
2002.
It was he was 39. He was playing for the Washington Wizards, and that's where he went out in 2002.
Yes, and frankly, in 2002, he was like people. I mean, The Last Dance doesn't even talk about that big documentary about Michael Jordan.
Yeah, they're gonna gloss over that.
Yeah, because he retired really in 1998, and then what happened afterwards was just like him kind of doing what Mick Foley did in TNA.
You know what I'm going to say though? I will cut you off a little bit on that. Michael Jordan can still get. I think he can still get 15, 20 points.
Well, no, he still can,
nowadays.
but business wise and from a sports team perspective wise, you're done. But the issue is, what you just talked about, he could still go. In WWE terms, he would still be going.
I mean, shoot, Sting's in his 60s, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but he can still go, it looks like. So I was very surprised.
So with that being said, it's much more difficult than just doing hey, these guys get older, they retire, we bring new guys in. It's more difficult than just, hey, we're having another season starting, everybody's got to try out for it. Let's see who makes the cut. Because essentially this is all, it's a story. And when you don't have some stories for some people, you got to let them go. And this is, as surprising as it was to me that Braun Strowman was released, and as surprising it was to me that Aleister Black was released because he was just made his return 2 weeks ago, it doesn't surprise me too much in the sense of, listen, we're just maybe when it comes to Aleister Black, maybe his return was the signal for him leaving because they brought him back. And when they brought him back, they realized, at this moment, we want to go a different direction.
Sure. And the thing that confuses me is he starts a feud with Big E and then that's it. That's all. Now, here's the thing. We were just talking, maybe it had to be in the last couple weeks, about Aleister Black's real life wife, Zelina Vega, coming back. What does this mean for her? Does this mean she's staying, or is she she's packing her bags along with her husband?
Well, you never know, because obviously now Lana is gone, but Lana stuck around after Rusev Mira left. What about a year ago?
I'll say this: I think Lana. You're going to see Lana first in AEW out of all these releases. Just not as a wrestler, but as I would say she's gonna be valet for Miro.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why
No
not?
question.
She's got the easiest shoe in right there because again, she's not coming in necessarily as a talent. Lana's another person that was just at WrestleMania. But I feel like you can't just look at the fact that they were just at these events, WrestleMania or WrestleMania Backlash in terms of Braun Strowman's case. You have to realize that maybe that is why they're being released, because they were just at these events, and the night after these events, they realized, well, just because you were just in the main event last night doesn't mean we're going to put you. That's kind of thing. If you won the main event, that's different. But if you didn't win the main event, that means we have to start a brand new program with you some other direction. And right now we don't have that.
And that's ridiculous, by the way. Like I'm just gonna start with Aleister Black and Braun Strowman. If WWE can't find creative for any of these guys, like what have you been doing all these years in the business? Like Aleister Black is one of the best strikers in the wrestling business. Why don't you use him in that aspect? Braun Strowman. Enough said. He's a monster among men. He's a massive individual, and Vince loves the big guys. And for some reason, you just cut him. Like, come on! Like, how do you not have a storyline in place for somebody like Braun Strowman or somebody like Aleister Black? To me, it's ridiculous. And also, I would also throw in Ruby Riott in there as well, because she did a lot of things on the independent side for a long time before she even came to WWE. So that's another talent just to throw one out there that was just. That just was not used properly. Santana Garrett was also released, and she was about to debut on SmackDown. She was about to debut. Within weeks, she was about to debut, and she's gone. Like, WWE, I don't know what's going on, but my gut is telling me this is just the beginning. I think we're going to see a lot more names. Don't be surprised, because they got to cut some of this fat for a pending sale, rumored, of course, pending sale that I think is coming. And here's the thing, not to be confused with Tony Khan, but Nick Khan, no relation, president of WWE.
Oh, Tony Khan made it quite clear, no relation.
Yeah, no relation, absolutely. So in that sense, it seems like these moves are budget cuts, like we said, and they're processing it to make it for a sale. Now, I'm going to throw you one company that I think, I don't know if it's got, I want to see a reaction when I say this company, Disney.
Oh, I mean, that was what I thought you were going to say. That's what everybody kind of says. Disney, obviously, because they own everything.
But here's my problem. There's pros and cons to it. And I'll put a couple things out there. The pros are Disney knows how to sell a story pretty damn well. We know that. We've seen all that. The major con that I have is, are we going to make this, TVG wrestling? Is that where we're going? Like, I hope that's not the case. From a storyline perspective, I like it, but I'm worried that what are we going to make it more kid-friendly? The PG era hasn't been that great, let's be honest with you. Back when it was TV 14 when we were kids, that was the best time for wrestling, let's be honest.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think it would essentially be TVG,
but
I would say, I mean, I guess you could probably look at wrestling from the perspective of Star Wars, because they own the Star Wars properties, and what have they done with them? I think they're still in the PG-13 range. They're not necessarily taken back too much off of Star Wars.
And as a non-Star Wars fan,
I would say the Attitude Era would probably not be coming back.
I mean, Disney does it right. They have done it right with that. I will give you that. I'm not a Star Wars guy. I'm not a fan. Not my thing. But what they've done, and from people that are big Star Wars fans that I know, have said Disney's done the justice with The Mandalorian and things like that.
Now, it sounds kind of crazy, though. I guess the issue with Disney, though, is they just sold all this stuff off to NBC, the Peacock Network, like, for example. I don't see them, because, again, if Disney owned them, are they still going to be on the Peacock Network? I mean, when if they move over to Disney Plus, how does that work with their Fox deal? How does that work with their, because is Disney all encompassing? Because I feel like if they were on Disney, then I imagine that WWE would be on ABC?
I don't know if they'd be on NBC because
ABC. That's a Disney property.
ABC, yes. ABC, I don't think, regardless of the big networks, I don't see them going to ABC. I just don't see that.
I don't know enough about Disney. Do they do they work with NBC? Do they work with Fox? Do they work with those things?
Disney works with a lot of different groups, to be honest with you. I couldn't even name the list. I mean, they work with just about, you name. Because
I imagine if they bought them, their main issue would be to make them their property. Like Star Wars, you can find it on Disney Plus. So if they bought them, I would imagine they would want WWE content.
If anybody
for
can get
Disney
it done,
Plus.
if anybody can get that done, where you jump through the hoops with the Fox, then the USA, and all that, it's Disney. Disney is one of those companies that can make things, maybe unlikely, likely. That's just what Disney does. And I'm not saying that that's happening, but if you read between the lines and you're like, okay, why do you cut a guy like Braun Strowman, Aleister Black, another great competitor, Ruby Riott, and then Aleister Black comes out and says, yeah, it was budget cuts. To me, that means they're cutting things for a sale. Any business person can tell you that. You're kind of getting things lined up and ready to go for a big sale. And to me, I mean, the perfect company to do it would be Disney.
Yeah. No, Braun Strowman, I say, is very much a surprise because even when you don't have something for him, you somehow can seem to get away with putting him in some minor storyline that he's acceptable with. For example, he can go from being in the world title to going against Shane McMahon on a whim's notice. In a stupid match that nobody's calling for. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say with Braun Strowman is kind of strange that they cut him is because, some of these other guys, if they're not in the world title picture or you don't really have something great for them, they kind of want more for themselves. But Braun Strowman, from what I've seen, is he doesn't really quote unquote want more for himself.
He's very versatile.
He's very much like if I'm not in the main event of SummerSlam, you want me on the pre-show, I'll do it.
That's how he is.
I'll win the world title at WrestleMania, and then I'll be in a stupid feud with Damian Priest or something in a lumberjack match.
You can make money with Braun, and I don't know why WWE would do this. Like Braun is, by all accounts, he's very much a team player, and like you said, you can go from main event to pre-show, and he's like, cool, whatever you need me to do. That's he seemed like he was the type of guy that was a company person, so to speak. So I'm very, very surprised.
Yeah, being a company person obviously doesn't stick you around in WWE because there's the most recently, obviously these releases show you people who have been great with the company. Now, Velveteen Dream, obviously there's the issues there. You can see why he's gone. But some of these other people, you're like, it's definitely not from a personality or like a team player perspective.
But I'm going to do a tongue-in-cheek approach to this really quick. Maybe they're clearing all this, in the sports world cap space to bring in, maybe Brock Lesnar. I've heard Brock Lesnar might be coming around the corner, and Brock Lesnar is going to he's going to get some big money. So, jokingly, of course, maybe they got to clear some space to bring Brock Lesnar back. I don't know.
I mean, you would hope that they would already have that kind of money because they brought him back before. We've had Brock and Braun on the same roster, as well as the fact that Brock needs opponents. I don't think. If he needs his opponents, Braun Strowman, you need him to be his opponent. Yeah. One of them, I guess.
Well, I mean, we've seen before. We all know what's going to happen. If Brock Lesnar does indeed come back, he's going to be facing Bobby Lashley.
Well, but obvious. Not forever.
Well, no.
I mean, I'm looking down the line.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's how many legitimate contenders out there? You could see facing off of Brock Lesnar and be like, okay, that guy can actually have, he can run, punch for punch, so to speak. With Brock Lesnar. There's not very many on the roster, I'm just saying.
One person that's interested in Braun Strowman in the early candidates to see where he goes is Billy Corgan and NWA. They've already talked to maybe he could be a fit there. I mean, I could see him a fit in NWA. It's kind of one of those old school kind of companies now, obviously, with the pandemic. They never really got to take off fully like they were doing in 2019, 2020, where they started pay-per-views and TV shows that I personally watched and found interesting. Since then, it's been very spotty with their TV shows and their pay-per-views and stuff like that.
I want him in AEW. If he's not in WWE, I want Braun Strowman.
But here's the thing, and I understand Tony Khan has a lot of money, but the issue is how many people can we bring to AEW? Does everybody go to AEW?
No, it's not. I don't expect every single I don't expect Aleister Black, to run right to there. He might go to Japan because maybe his style is more a Japanese style anyways. So for me, Braun Strowman would be a great fit for AEW. I would like to see, I'm just going to throw a matchup that I think you'd want to see. Braun Strowman and Lance Archer. I'm buying. I'll buy that any day of the week. I'm just saying.
No, that would be good. I guess the issue is, the thing is too, with everyone going over to AEW was who's WWE ever going to get from AEW? Because so far it's been they go to AEW, but there's got to be that even balance of it. And then we move guys back to WWE.
I mean, honestly, I could see down the line. It's not. I don't know. You consider this a splash, but I could see Matt Hardy back in WWE at some point. I mean,
I feel like his gimmick in AEW is getting a little stale. Just because he is kind of that gimmick wrestler. He is kind of that guy who comes in and makes a splash and does one of those storybook cinematic matches and has kind of that unique personality. But after a while, we get it. The fighting on the Hardy compound. We saw it in Impact Wrestling. I mean, look at the impact he made when he came back to WWE. Now, granted, he was doing great things in Impact Wrestling, but he got to a point where even in Impact Wrestling, he was starting to get stale. He was not, the night before at the Ring of Honor show, he wasn't getting the reaction he got in WWE, even though he's still the same guy.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It wasn't like that Ring of Honor show was just packed to the gills, sold out. We had to see this guy. He's the hottest thing in wrestling. It was when he came to WWE, they knew, okay, we're going to get a refresh of this because he did this awesome thing, and now it's getting a little kind of like Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega did this awesome thing. He's the hottest wrestler in wrestling. You could say that in 2016 or 2017, but right now it's kind of hard to say he's the hottest wrestler in wrestling. I mean, some will still say it, but the issue is the fact that it's debatable. In 2018, it wasn't debatable. Kenny Omega, when you watched the Royal Rumble, you were like, this would be the biggest thing in the world if Kenny Omega showed up to the Royal Rumble. Now you think now you can watch him on AEW all the time and he's all right, but you don't pop when he comes out for AEW like if he came out for the Royal Rumble. No. Because you're just used to seeing him every night. You need to see him do a refresh.
I mean, Kenny Omega he's box office. I mean, he's very, very box office. He's one of the biggest names in the business. I mean, if you ask the Dave Meltzers, who I'm not a big fan of, him and the Young Bucks, he loves those guys. To me, I'm still taking Roman Reigns based off of everything that Roman Reigns is doing right now. The total package, I just enjoy what Roman Reigns is doing more than Kenny Omega. And it's not a slight on Kenny Omega because Kenny Omega's done a lot of great things with his title reign that he's had. I mean, he's got multiple titles. You saw that at the pay-per-view. But I think the Roman Reigns story, along with having Paul Heyman, by his side as his advisor, so to speak, that to me is the best championship storyline in the business right now.
Yeah, well, like I said though, either way, regardless of what you feel about Kenny Omega, the point is, I mean, you just need to refresh sometimes. You just need to switch 100%. Companies. Players do it in sports. They just switch teams just to sell some different jerseys, get a different perspective.
You're seeing that right now in the NFL with Tim Tebow. I mean, Tim Tebow, he's a tight end. He was a quarterback in the pros for a little bit. Heisman Trophy quarterback years ago. Now his old college coach is coaching the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is actually owned by Tony Khan.
Yes, we saw it. Well, we saw it at Double or Nothing. Yes, obviously, Urban Meyer's little cameo appearance.
Yeah, Urban Meyer, Charlie Strong, both appeared in the pay-per-view. But that's what it's. I mean, I don't think it's with Tim Tebow. It's definitely about he's it's a local boy. He's going to sell some merch. But I think at the end of the day, for Tim Tebow, I think he's going to be the kind of guy he's going to make the roster.
So I'm not saying that Kenny Omega should switch to WWE. I know he won't, especially right now.
Absolutely not. No,
but I think somebody like Matt Hardy, like you were saying, he could make the switch back. And then be back up to, again, if WWE uses him right, he can be back up to that.
Here's what I would say.
Main event kind of, everyone's paying to see him for a minute.
Call me crazy, but when Jeff and Matt, and they're going to do this. This is what they've been linked obviously since day one. Since the wrestling days began many years ago when they were at the pay-per-view. I think it was King of the Ring.
King of the Ring is door holders.
Door holders. I mean, here's the thing. They will retire together. They're going to make one final run in WWE as a tag team. I have no doubts in my mind. They are not going to finish their careers out without one more final run in WWE. I am calling that right now.
Speaking of moving over to AEW and Double or Nothing, we'll start with, what do you think of the tweet that was going around, if you haven't seen it? There was a picture of Urban Meyer, I guess Charlie Strong, you just said. I wasn't familiar who that guy was.
Yes.
But Urban Meyer, Chris Jericho, MJF, all sitting around a monitor. So what I'm guessing is that part was filmed. And then later on, they were like watching it for their cues, in which then to integrate into the live audience and when to go from the taped part. We saw this, the Boiler Room Brawl at SummerSlam 96. They taped the Boiler Room Brawl, I think, like 2 days earlier. And then they pretty much just waited in gorilla position for their time to match right up and come right out into the live audience, which I guess is good because it's better than the whole thing being taped like it was last year.
Sure.
But there was a picture of Urban Meyer, Chris Jericho, and MJF sitting around and looking at a monitor and laughing and having a good time and pointing out like, remember when I did like kind of getting a laugh, and people said, obviously kayfabe is quite dead, but people made a point to say, and for good reason, do you really need to push it that much? Do we really need a photo literally during a match? Like, I think it surfaced a day later.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be like, obviously we know Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker, they are not, hating each other. They're not the biggest rivals. But the day after SummerSlam 98, before the Raw even airs, to cool off from that match, do we need a photo of them like hugging in the back or laughing about the match or doing, give it some minutes here. Give it some seconds to breathe.
That kind of stuff, I mean, which you're going to see a lot of in those, when it was WWE Network, when you had those backstage stuff that they aired, like it was like WrestleMania from 5 years ago or something like that. Or watching the A&E biographies where you're seeing, you see Undertaker and Shawn Michaels destroying the hell out of each other, and then once they get through Gorilla and they're backstage, they're loving, they're hugging. And I will tell you this: the one thing that changed the business forever and broke that wall, so to speak, was in Madison Square Garden when you had the Clique breaking that wall, and they were all hugging as Hall and Nash were off to WCW.
Well, obviously that seems to be like the origins of it.
Oh,
I will say, looking back on that, it's really not even that bad that they were like all hugging and like each other. For the fact, what I mean by that is that kayfabe still could stick around a little bit later. I mean, that was even before the Attitude Era. That was even before wrestling was the hottest.
But that had ripples. That had ripple effects for the next, the Attitude Era. Because think of it this way: who got the brunt of that punishment that night?
Oh, yes.
Triple H.
But what I'm saying from a fan's perspective, I think the WWE might have made a bigger deal out of that than fans were going to make. Meaning if WWE never acknowledged that, never even said anything about that, I don't think it would have been that big of a deal. One, it was a house show. Two, I mean, it's just off some guy's camera. And three, those two other guys were like leaving the company. So it wasn't like the next night on Monday Night Raw, you had Kevin Nash going against Triple H and talking smack about each other.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's well known that not every wrestler hates every other wrestler. Even if you were to believe kayfabe, even if you were to believe that, there is some sort of animosity.
Tongue in cheek, when Shawn Michaels was going through his trials and tribulations, he was not very well liked in the locker room.
That is true.
But he's made amends since then.
But you know what I mean? To see wrestlers on occasion kind of like, I mean, because obviously, for example, what if that was, for all intents and purposes, for all those people know, that could have just been a face turn?
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, you could have played it that way if you needed to. Vince would have made some money off of it somehow. It's
the issue is those guys were leaving. If those guys were staying, you'd just been like, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, they're all teaming up. They're doing a new faction.
But I'm going to circle back to that Shawn Michaels.
I mean, Hulk Hogan wasn't breaking kayfabe when he came out and he was joining up with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall.
Here's the thing.
That was the storyline. He was turning to that.
I don't know if you saw the interview in the Shawn Michaels A&E biography that they were talking about that incident. And Ric Flair pretty much said if that happened in the 70s and 80s, all four of those guys would have gotten their ass kicked. It was at 70s and 80s was such a different era.
Yes.
And the 90s and mid-90s
and we don't need 70s and 80s era kayfabe. I would just personally like just a little blurring of the lines. Just a little of that stuff.
I'm with you. You. Yeah.
So we don't, I mean, if it's fine if that picture surfaces 20 years later, 10 years later of MJF and Chris Jericho, but we don't need it in the middle of the feud.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
I don't want them to pause a movie I'm watching and then like show me behind the scenes of how they did it and then be like, and now back to the movie.
And like you said,
show me after the movie.
10 years later.
And in this sense, show me after the storyline is over.
Exactly. Like 10 years later, like, oh man, they got me good on that one. That was well done. Good job, guys. Kudos. That was entertaining.
Because, I mean, essentially these feuds are not even really over. You know what I mean? Like, again, you can watch a story about how they made a movie after the movie because you've watched the movie. And in this case, these are not just matches. These are long cinematic storylines that go on for weeks and sometimes months at a time. So these are still going. So the fact is that the next day when this storyline officially hasn't ended, Chris Jericho, MJF, they haven't rejoined sides or one's retired or one's left AEW.
It's the series between the Pinnacle and Inner Circle is 1-1. So I called that correctly, 1-1.
Yes.
So I mean, we got one more to go.
So essentially it is not over. So wait until that is over with before we see a picture. But moving on to the pay-per-view itself, we saw the debut of Mark Henry. And that also adds to a little bit of what we talk about with AEW. Are they the the wrestling fans company of just the young, small guys? Or are they trying to be WCW? Like, what? We're bringing over Mark Henry now?
They're working.
Mark Henry, Big Show,
They're working that
Sting.
fine line. But here's the thing. Mark Henry made it known to Vince McMahon. He left amicably. So, that's what Mark Henry said. He said it on, I think, what's the show on Sirius XM with
Busted Open?
Busted Open. Thank you. That when he said in the interview that him and Vince had a good conversation and they parted ways, in a very nice form. And Mark Henry, he wanted to do more. He didn't want to. He's one of those people. He wants to do more.
Every wrestler wants to do more.
Well, Mark Henry knows his in-ring career is done. He wants to be able to do more than just nothing. He wants to do more. And Tony Khan is doing more for these guys, and I think it's great. Yeah, you don't want to bring in every single person, but why not? I think having Paul White and Mark Henry, two great wrestlers, in there as mentors.
What do you do them?
They're mentors.
Managers.
No, they're mentors. They're mentors. They're essentially.
I mean, I know Big Show's on AEW Dark, as a broadcaster.
They're really mentors. They're going to teach some of these young guys the business, because Mark Henry, Big Show, or Paul
if that's
White,
the case, then what are they doing on TV?
Because they're going to use them in multiple ways. That's what AEW is doing. They're smart about it. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? I mean, I know some guys like in WWE. A lot of us remember Jamie Noble.
Mercury, Jamie Noble, they're on the back.
Every once in a while, you'll see Jamie Noble out there breaking up a fight. But that's what you're gonna see. You're gonna see a lot of superstars like that. But Big Show, Mark Henry, strike when the iron's hot. You let them do a few things. They get a little bit on camera. You're not going to see them wrestle again. I don't think Paul White and Mark Henry are wrestling again. But I mean, I guess you can't never say never because Sting. We'll get to that in a second. But Sting had an interesting match.
Did you like it?
Sting's match, yeah. I actually wasn't. I was not. I was not disappointed. I was pretty happy. I thought for what it was a pretty good match. I mean, what was your take on it? I enjoyed it.
No, I mean it was a pretty good match. I mean, I didn't see Sting doing anything too wild. I guess.
Wait. Too wild. He jumped off. He made a nice splash.
Yeah, but I mean
that's a good little bump right there for a guy that's in his 60s.
Yes. Okay. So you correct. He did do a few things, but I guess my thing is he kind of performed in the match, and I guess I never thought that he officially lost it. I mean, we've seen wrestlers before. I know he's older, but we've seen Flair and stuff like that. They're not in Funk and all these people in their older age do some stuff. So I guess I never thought that he lost it, and the fact that he's in a tag team match, he wasn't a 35-minute one-on-one match.
No, I don't think those. I think those days have come and gone. But I think the tag team style and the cinematic style is the way you can book these kind of guys. Mm-hmm. Even if you do book a Mark Henry or a Paul White, that's what you do. You put them in these cinematic style matches because you're protecting them. Also, a tag team match also protects them because in that case, who's protecting Sting in that instance? Darby Allin. So, and the competitors in the match. All three are protecting Sting. That's their job. Literally, before they even come through that curtain, so to speak, they know their job. We're going to do everything we can to make sure Sting looks good. That's what you got to do. That's what you're supposed to do, and Sting's going to do what he can to make the other guys get over.
Which Stadium Stampede match did you like better, last year's or this year's?
Oh, man, that's splitting hairs because I enjoyed them both. I'll just say because the iron's hot, I'll go with this year's one. I thought it was just a great match overall.
I won't lie, watching the pay-per-view, I completely forgot about that. I remember the end of the Kenny Omega match, and I thought, well, that's the end of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, me too. I thought about it for a second.
And then I was like, well, wait, hold on a minute. We got this major match. Forgot entirely all about it.
Now, what I found it was interesting, after the whole Owen Hart thing, the anniversary just came up. What did you see Jericho and the Inner Circle doing in their entrance? I was like, whoa. I was not expecting them to kind of SEAL Team 6 down the stadium there. That was very interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously the MJF coming in there, the whole, I mean, it reminded me a lot of last year's Stadium Stampede match. Obviously this year it went into the arena, which is good because you don't want to, screw off the people who paid tickets.
How did you like the display of the of Daly's place? I know they made a few little adjustments. The crowd was hot. The crowd was on fire.
I liked it a lot better than the Dynamites, the pay-per-views in the past. And it went back to what it was before. And that was crowd all the way around.
Electric,
and really showing off that the crowd is there.
Yeah.
I guess that's the issue with that. I mean, that's the pros and the cons of not having fans. The pros is that if you face the stage, A lot of us don't really know the difference. The cons, though, when you do have fans back, is that you got to face the fans, or we're not going to know the difference. If they would have just had the same setup, but would have filled up Daily Place from the perspective of the seats that they had available without adding the ones on the stage, then it really wouldn't have probably felt too much different.
I got to tell you, though.
They needed that fans all the way around look.
Man, I have to say, I was loving it. Those fans, that crowd was hot. That crowd was awesome. They were engaged all the way through. And I was very happy in the Casino Royale there, the Battle Royal. Jungle Boy, told you that. I had a good feeling about Jungle Boy. He was due. He's been so close before. I'm happy for him. He gets a well-deserved push, because the thing I love about AEW compared to WWE, Jungle Boy would just be in 205 Live. But in AEW, he was actually getting main event pushes, which is absolutely fantastic, which is why AEW, to me, right now...
Well, I mean, they do some things until they release him, a.k.a. Buddy Murphy. They give him pushes, and then they release him.
Well, Buddy Murphy, I mean, his highlight was what? He was Seth Rollins' henchman? I mean, is that really what it is?
Yeah, yes.
Can he go? Sure. I mean, Buddy Murphy and Aleister Black, speaking of we're going to circle back to Aleister Black, those two always put on a good match. Those two were fun. They had that chemistry. I would love to see them duplicate it. And maybe they go back. Maybe they go across the pond and go back to New Japan or go over to New Japan and their style fits the New Japan style. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see them at a Wrestle Kingdom next year.
Not everything AEW though turns to gold. One of their lowest TV ratings ever, unopposed, this past Friday night. They're going to be Dynamite again this Friday night.
Yeah, it's you know what? It's tough. It's a Friday night. It's at 10:00. To me. I think it's a good thing that they're moving to TBS.
I mean, here in the States, it also was a holiday weekend. A lot of people are getting out of town.
Yeah, I mean, and overall, I mean, how are you going to, I mean, honestly, I didn't watch Friday Night Dynamite. I mean, I already knew, like, Miro. There's no way Miro's not going to the pay-per-view as the champ. I mean, overall, I mean, I got to tell you, the pay-per-view Double or Nothing was fantastic. I absolutely enjoyed it. I was amped up all the way through. It was a good night. The Kenny Omega match was fun. That was a great match. And I do enjoy the new John Moxley entrance. I love the Wild thing. Being baseball fans brings me back to Major League back in the day with Ricky Vaughn. So every time I hear Wild thing, it gets me going. And I got to tell you, I mean, that was a very good match.
Saw a lot of Vaughn jerseys, I guess, at the Cleveland Indians baseball game I was at on Sunday.
Did you really?
People I know who, like, I went with somebody who's a baseball fan, but he's more like a Major League movie fan than he would be a baseball fan. So going to Cleveland, that's what he thinks about. So I'm going to root for this team because of the movie Major League.
It'd be like the equivalent of like going to a Ducks game and wearing like Conway from like Mighty Ducks.
Exactly.
That's
and there's
cool,
probably
right?
a lot of people who, if I
cool.
took them to a Mighty Ducks game, they would be interested would be that connection.
They'd wear the 96 Conway. I gotta ask you though, was there a match that you enjoyed the most on Double or Nothing? Or anything that stands out? I enjoyed the Young Bucks versus Mox and Eddie Kingston. That was a really good match.
That might have been the highlight for me as well. I think that might have been the best match. I mean, I really liked how they kicked things off with Brian Cage and Adam Page.
Good match.
That was a good match to kick things off. Britt Baker winning the championship. Boy, they made a big deal about that. And Tony Schiavone going out there and hugging her after she won.
Of course. I mean, her and Tony are good friends.
Yes.
They play off of that pretty well.
The main event was okay. It was definitely not, if you were to compare Triple Threat of WrestleMania with the Roman Reigns, I'm still taking that one over Pac and
I mean, and here's the thing, and it's nothing against the competitors in that match. Like, I enjoy Pac, I enjoy Orange Cassidy, and here's the thing, and I said this on previous episodes. I'm not a huge Pac fan, but I respect what he does. He's not my flavor. I think he's a great competitor. I wouldn't have been upset if he won the championship. Mm-hmm. There was a few close calls there. There was a couple moments where you're like, wait a second, Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy might get it. I mean, how cool would that have been? Orange Cassidy being champion. I thought that'd be interesting. But I think for business purposes, you got to keep Kenny Omega as the champion at this point. Now, I do want to touch on one thing. NXT this week, chaos, and more chaos. It was quite the night on Tuesday. Adam Cole now is inserting himself in a fatal 5-way now. So it's going to, and that segment, that promo there between Cross and Cole was absolutely money. I absolutely enjoyed that. And you get Regal in there to intervene, and pretty much both of them are saying, Regal, shut up. And then Cross says, I want I want every single one of them in the match. So now it's not even a fatal 4-way; it's a fatal 5-way, which I think is going to it's going to be a lot of fun. And the reason why I say chaos, there was a lot of brawls that were spilling out into the Capitol Wrestling Center. You saw Ember Moon and Raquel Gonzalez, which there's going to be some more for that. I mean, you saw some backstage interactions between the Ways. What's the kid's name? Austin Theory, and then Oni Lorca, and there was a little issue there as well. It was a lot of chaos, but I have to tell you, the Cole segment was fun with Karrion Kross, and also they start the show off with that triple threat match, which ended up being, it was a no contest at that point. If there was an actual result, that would have been one of the best. Without the result, it was one of the better matches I've seen in a while, because Dunn, Gargano, O'Reilly, they just put on a show. It was kind of, I see why they built the way they did, but those three can go. You insert those three with Cole and Kross, I'm in. I can't.
What are you looking forward to more? This past week's AEW Double or Nothing, or next weekend's NXT In Your House Takeover?
Wow. The way things are being built right now, I'm gonna lean towards NXT Takeover. I'm leaning In Your House. That's where I'm at. I mean, Double or Nothing was fantastic with the crowd and everything.
I think Double or Nothing had not a great build when it comes to so much matches, but just a great build when it comes to the return of fans and turning this into essentially this huge event, like the WrestleMania for AEW, I guess.
Yeah, it was. I mean, as a wrestling fan, it's a good time right now. You just had a great pay-per-view this past weekend, and then not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, we're going to have a little NXT pay-per-view coming up. So In Your House is coming back again. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
And it's weird that we have another WWE pay-per-view, one more in the Thunderdome, because of the fact that normally Hell in a Cell is such a build-up. Normally, back in the day, year 2000, if I could have tickets to an event that had Hell in a Cell as the main event, I would look forward to that more than maybe WrestleMania. And now we're just glossing right over that, because all the talk is about SummerSlam. Where's it going to be? What's the match is going to be? Money in the Bank even, because that's going to have fans in attendance. I mean, it's crazy to think we have this. Oh, I even forgot myself. Like, oh, wait, we still got one more pay-per-view. And it's Hell in a Cell. Like, how awful is that his fans were like, just get through Hell in a Cell. Normally, as we just saw with the McFoley biography, Hell in a Cell is like a huge deal, or used to be, and now we're looking at it like it's like the go home SmackDown before WrestleMania. You're just like, well, just get through it. Let's get through it.
Which is crazy to me, because that spot when Taker throws Mankind off the cage onto the table is one of my greatest memories of sports entertainment. One of my almost, I would say, one of my earliest memories that I can recall, like watching it live. As a kid, like I do remember some pieces of like 96, 97, but 98 is really where I remember, like, okay, I was watching this right here at my friend's house or with my dad, and I watched that pay-per-view, and to me, that was one of my favorite matches of all time.
But leading into Hell in a Cell, we did have a roadblock, I guess, on the way to what I was talking about last week, and was kind of alluding to last week, and maybe talking about it again. We'll skip this week. The return of Kofi Mania. Obviously, Kofi had a chance to get a number one contendership. He did not. We're going to get Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley again at Hell in a Cell pay-per-view.
Did you just do a Chris Jericho again?
I did.
Okay, I thought I caught that.
Well, I mean, it's Chris Jericho bringing it in from Canada. It's not a personal Chris Jericho thing. It's more like his stereo.
It's a shtick, though.
That is his shtick. Yeah. That he's from Winnipeg and he shows it off. So Drew McIntyre heading into Hell in a Cell. We will talk about that. Maybe going down the line. Maybe talk about if Kofi Kingston, this is just a roadblock, and maybe Kofi Mania 2 is still on the horizon. But we'll finish this week's show off with just a quick SummerSlam. We got the official date, August the 21st, a Saturday night. Rumors are that they moved it to a Saturday night because that's what Allegiant Stadium wanted back in the day when they were talking about some sort of, putting them at Allegiant Stadium. But a lot of people are also still saying that that's not even 100% itself, because that discussion of moving it to August 21st was put in place before the the Pacquiao fight, the Manny Pacquiao fight. So I guess my question is, do you see any audibles at the last minute? The night before SummerSlam, SmackDown is in Phoenix. 2 nights later, Raw is in San Diego. Do you see any audibles to it being in Las Vegas? Because there are no Northeast shows. Some people are still saying it could be MetLife Stadium. There's no New York City shows on this tour. There's no Boston shows on this tour. There's no Philly shows on this tour.
I always say TBD.
Well, they're going
To
to
be
announce it
determined.
this Sunday or this Saturday at the Belmont Stakes. Do you see that? Do you see it just being Las Vegas, or again, like?
I think it's Vegas. I'm content with saying Vegas at this point.
Yeah, and now, and the more I think about it, a lot of people are making a big deal about that fight, but the more I think about it, really, I mean, let's say New York City. Let's say they're in New York City. Aren't they going to be going up against Yankee games? Aren't they going to go against Giants preseason games? So, I mean,
Well,
wherever they go, they're going to be going against New York City, Philadelphia. You think they're the only show in town? WrestleMania, you think they're the only show in town at WrestleMania? When they go to New Orleans, you think only everyone's there for WrestleMania? It's New Orleans, Miami, Florida.
Yeah.
That's what I guess I'm trying to get at. So everyone's making a big deal about this Manny Pacquiao fight. I feel like, yeah, they're always going to, Las Vegas. Something else is going to be going on at all times that night. That's
I agree.
So that's going to finish up this show. I'm picking Las Vegas, unfortunately. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to be going there. Well, that'll be a story for another day. But for Brandon, myself, Jared, we will talk next week. The build up to NXT In Your House. We'll talk all that next week. We'll run down the whole card and everything. Until then, this has been the Heel of Face Podcast.